Welcome back to Cinema Flicks and Music Picks. I'm David, your host with the most, your beast with the least. Today, we're going to have a look at a new arrival from The Film Detective. And what more suitable title from The Film Detective could there be than The Great Detective, Mr. Sherlock Holmes? Yes. I feel like we've seen this kind of packaging on a million different Holmes collections, with the silhouette, with the cameo, if you like, You can imagine on a brooch, can't you? But this is the Sherlock Holmes Vault collection from Film Detective. 4 classic mysteries, newly restored, including exclusive special features. Now, this came out last month. It just worked its way across the Atlantic now. It must have come by Victorian paddle steamer. But let's just dig in. So it's kind of a trilogy and then an extra film. You'll see what I mean here. So we have A Study in Scarlet with Reginald Owen as Holmes. Reginald Owen, who of course would go on to be the first televised Quatermass for those of us interested in our British TV history. And each one of these comes with a little art card, not quite a postcard, but a little art card of the artwork, and then a little booklet, which runs, they've all got stills and history, so not massive, but let's take it out. I think that'll be a bit easier rather than trying to flick through it. So let's see, 10 pages in this one. A Study in the Unfilmed by C. Courtney Joyner, who's quite the film historian. So although you're not getting massive booklets, they are by quite notable names. C. Courtney Joyner's if you know your film historians, you'll know C. Courtney Joyner. What is interesting about that one for me is that it also features Anna May Wong, who went on to be really the first Asian film star. She was massive in the UK anyway. I'm not sure about America, but in the UK she was absolutely huge. She was the #1 film star in the UK in the late 20s. And when I said we're coming up for a trilogy, that's because what we're getting here is the Arthur Watner films. Now, you might notice, or have noticed if you're someone who has these films in other editions, these are films which you might have seen on these 4 packs, where it's like 4 films on 2 DVDs or something for £3 at a motorway or a service station. Probably not on a motorway, they don't tend to sell things on the actual motorway. Highway for Americans. Because this is the Arthur Watner trilogy with Ian Fleming, not that one, as Watson. So we've got The Fatal Hour. This kind of joins up The Empty House and The Final Problem, so it's the Moriarty stuff. The Triumph of Sherlock Holmes. This is a post-retirement one. So it's the beekeeping era, and Silver Blaze is kind of their adaptation of Baskervilles, even though it's set more at the horse racing when Holmes is on holiday. But again, Arthur Watner was, they've kind of cut this card off. You see that at the edge there. Nice effort though. And these again, booklets. Arthur Watner True Brit Part 2. So this kind of sets the trilogy ones become a little booklet series. So you can kind of join them up as one thing. So almost, as I said, a trilogy unto itself, with the addition of the Reginald Owen film on top, just to, I guess, pad it out. I love the cover on the Fatal Hour, isn't that great? That looks more film noir, even though noir hadn't even been coined yet. Again, I don't need to show you all these, but why not? They're here. elephant in the room we'll come to in a moment, but special features. The liner notes on this are by Jason Ney, who also does a commentary. It's got a bonus short and a bonus episode of the TV show with Ronald Howard, Leslie Howard's son. This one has a commentary with writers, producers Foth Sutton and Mark Jordan Lagan, and a 3-part kind of featurette, which stretches over the Arthur Warner films of his era and his duration as Holmes and the kind of evaluation. It's also got a Felix the Cat cartoon, and a bonus short, Cousins of Sherlock Holmes. Commentary with the author Jennifer Churchill. Part 1 of that featurette that I mentioned. A radio broadcast recreation of the Blue Carbuncle. One of the, I guess it's the best Christmas Holmes story, isn't it? Really, it's the best one to listen to that time of year. A black Sherlock Holmes bonus short. Cut and uncut, so I wonder what's so interesting that needs to be cut. And then from 1900, a bonus short, Sherlock Holmes Baffled. And given they probably only have one reel, it'll just be a few minutes of him going, But yeah. And then did we do the original Dawn? No, I put that away stupidly. This one, the original Dawn one, commentary with Peter Atkins and David Breckman, who are both authors and screenwriters. A quite long documentary on the first cinematic adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which kind of does everything up to Basil Rathbone. A Mutt and Jeff cartoon called Slick Sleuths, and again the essay from C. Courtney Joyner. So yeah, I noticed that one of these quite interesting. Doesn't that picture of Holmes there look more like Christopher Lee, or even Ian Fleming? Funnily enough's version of his illustration of what James Bond should look like. So lovely set, fantastic looking, wonderful essays, easily the best thing film detective have ever produced on paper. Again, as I said, there's an elephant in the room, and it doesn't take a sleuth to find out what it is. Film quality. As I said, you'll have found these before on cheap DVD editions, and there's a reason for that. They are out of copyright. They have no legal masters. They have no great right of ownership. They are public domain. You could put them out if you wanted to. Why not? Do it now. But Film Detective do get a bit of stick for releasing these kind of films, but that is their raison d'etre, is to take these films that have only existed in the public domain in bad prints and give them the best possible release. So although they still kind of put the caveat on it that, yeah, look, they're always going to look, it's the best you will have ever seen them, I promise you that much. So although if you're expecting them to come up to the quality of the Rathbones or any of the later kind of black and white stuff, don't. Because it just won't. Sometimes it'll take a dip in quality. There's still some cuts and scratches on the print, and Film Detective don't have the budget to be able to do a full restoration. And again, there wouldn't be that much to actually go back and restore. I mean, they'd have to just do it all digitally and take existing frames and try and do that. So yeah, that kind of thing is Criterion standards, and Film Detective don't have the budget to be able to do that. So I got this for 20 quid, 20 of Her Majesty's pounds, imported. It's worth every penny of that. So if you go into it, just bear in mind, yeah, you don't expect that these are going to be breathtaking transfers, but it will be the best you've ever seen them. And if you're someone who's only ever had Rathbone era stuff and beyond, I think I think this will do you good to jump in a little bit earlier. However, there's no point in just having a look at one little thing. I thought, why not take a look at a couple of other Sherlock Holmes recommendations while we're here. So very briefly, I'll fly through these. I think it's been very popular over the decades as putting Sherlock Holmes against the Ripper, Jack the Ripper. I guess the timeline adding up was too perfect for writers to resist. So, Study in Terror with John Neville, Donald Houston, Anthony Quayle's in here, Barbara Windsor, Frank Finlay, a very young Judi Dench, and also Murder by Decree, a bit later, late 70s, with Donald Sutherland, Christopher Plummer, and James Mason, which has got a Kim Newman commentary, so this is essential from Studio Canal. Study in Terror is a bit more hammery, which isn't meant to put it down at all, because I'm a massive Hammer fan. In fact, I should have got out the Hound of the Baskervilles from Hammer. The Arrow edition of Hound of the Baskervilles from Hammer is the one you want to go from. It's got a million extras, including a documentary with Christopher Lee going into Sherlock Holmes history. So Holmes versus the Ripper, those two, if that sounds like your cup of tea, those two. Even earlier than the ones we've just looked at here with Arthur Watner and Reginald Owen, William Gillette. These are both Flicker Alley. William Gillette, considered by many the definitive Holmes on stage. This was considered lost for a very long time until it was found in the 2000s sometime. 2014. It's wonderful to have. The booklet kind of admits, it was early cinema, so don't go thinking that this is representative of what the great man could do on screen, on stage, because obviously it's silent, being 1916. It's dual format, and it's got a plethora of extras. It's got Sherlock Holmes baffled again, that same shot. Spot the dog in a canine Sherlock. And then all sorts of interviews about the restoration, a typescript from the actual play, rare lobby cards and flyers, booklets with essays and all sorts. I'm not going to go into every booklet and every essay because you came for the main one. And then another one that was found, not a million miles, quite far away, because it was found in Europe, but it was found again relatively recently. This one unfortunately doesn't say quite when, but it came at the very end of the silent era. It's Der Hand von Baskerville, which, as you can probably guess, is the Hound of the Baskervilles. This gives you it's Richard Oswald directed this, an expat who moved to Germany under the Weimar film kind of institute, if you will. When Germans were making the best films in the world, with Fritz Lang and F.W. Murnau. So 66 minutes long, so what would that be, a 3-reeler? Yeah, I guess a 3-reeler. Again, it's got the 1914 version of an earlier cut, so it's different from the William Gillette one. So there's, Holmes there's been so many even before the Arthur Watner one that I showed you. A short film in which Holmes and Doyle experts Glenn Minraker and Russell Menrip present the history and significance of this particular version, and a short film by Jim Granato on the challenges of restoring it to something that would represent an interest for Holmes fans and something worthy of a great discovery. Those two, if you like your silence films and you want to see the real origins of Holmes on screen, William Gillette and your European Holmes. And then a kind of trilogy here of deconstructions of Holmes, ways of taking the mythos of Holmes and challenging it, which became quite popular. I guess it happens to every character eventually, but what I like about them is they're all respectful. None of them are piss takes. Not that you can't take the piss out of anything, but personally, you know, what are the great Sherlock Holmes comedies? Peter Cook and Dudley, that one didn't work. And the Gene Wilder, the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, that didn't work. And certainly the Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly one didn't work. I haven't seen Sherlock Gnomes, you'll need to forgive me. Maybe that's a masterpiece. But yeah, Billy Wilder's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. Whew, what a film. I only wish we had the complete version, because as Holmes Hounds know, this was originally going to be much, much longer and be a kind of roadshow film cut into two with an intermission. And as such, there are parts of this film that feel like, did we miss something here? No, the film misses something. It's still 2 hours long. Robert Stevens is a great Holmes. Colin Blakely is a great Watson. And Christopher Lee is a fantastic Mycroft. You can see why Sherlock would be kind of intimidated by his brother when it's Christopher Lee. But it goes into, there's a 50-minute documentary on the deleted sequences, and it presents them in full. The original prologue, then Christopher Lee does an interview about working with Billy Wilder, who he always said was the best director he ever worked with. Sorry, Terence Fisher. Sorry, Mr. Spielberg. But this kind of gives you vignettes in the life of Sherlock Holmes, where there's a bit of a mystery going throughout it, but it also gives you kind of short adventures within it. One in which Sherlock has to pretend to be gay to escape the clutches of a woman. There's a whole scene with the Loch Ness Monster, you know, but not in a silly way. That, you know, there is an explanation, a scientific explanation as to why. So yeah, that's a much maligned film at the time, but now I think an acknowledged Billy Wilder classic and a great Holmes movie in its own right. Because although things are kind of silly sometimes around Holmes, he's never silly with it. He's sometimes a bit flummoxed or a little bit, you know, amused, but it's always a knowing wink rather than a pee take. This one really deconstructs Holmes. The 7% Solution, starring Scotland's own Nicola Williamson, one of the most intense actors going, with, what is he? I can't believe he's not in the cover. Robert Duvall was Watson in this, with that accent. Holmes, when are we going back to London? And Alan Arkin plays Sigmund Freud. So in this, there's Robert Duvall in the back with a wonderful wig. In this, Sherlock Holmes is indeed a detective, and Watson, well, it's all real, but he has flights of fancy. Moriarty isn't his arch nemesis. It's a result of his drug addiction, the 7% Solution. Written and directed by, is it directed by him as well, or is it just written by him? Sorry, it's directed by Herbert Ross, I beg your pardon, but it's written by Nicholas Meyer, who wrote the book of the 7% Solution. Vanessa Redgrave, I should say, as well, up there too. Vanessa. Well, she's old now, she wasn't then. But this is a wonderfully avant-garde take on Holmes, where it looks at drug abuse and how it can kind of mess with your psyche, but also he's still Sherlock Holmes. So although he might have made up part of it in his head, there are parts of the film where he still has to be Sherlock Holmes, and it kind of blends the psychosis of a drug addict with the psychosis of a genius into one kind of film, and it's rather wonderful. The first time I watched it, I was a bit perplexed, but on rewatching, it's very rewarding. There's a lot of fun sequences. When the film just dips a little bit in energy, along comes Alan Arkin as Sigmund Freud, and it just gives it that bit of a kick up the backside that it needed. It's a terrific little film, and very, very 70s in its kind of deconstruction. It's a bit like another Holmes deconstruction, They Might Be Giants, with George C. Scott. Here's one that I just find so fun, and I love I've got the French edition of it, because I just think the title in French works. It makes a pun that only works in French. Élémentaire, Moonshare, Sherlock Holmes. So, my dear Sherlock Holmes. Doesn't work in English, but Moonshare, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock, dear Locke. Doesn't work in English, but it works perfectly in French. So this, if you've never seen it, has Watson is real, and he's been writing these diaries, but there is no Sherlock Holmes, and he has to hire an actor played by Michael Caine at his 80s what do you call it, Hannah and her sisters, that kind of era, or Educating Rita Best, where he'd been acting long enough to kind of be on top form, but he wasn't quite into that older Michael Caine, the old wizened type that we see in films from the 90s onwards. So this really is a bit farcical, and it might be a bit silly for some. And I guess when I said there hasn't been a great Holmes comedy, this is a great Holmes comedy. But again, it also is a great Sherlock Holmes movie, even though Sherlock Holmes does not exist. Watson finds that it's bitten off more than they can chew in terms of creating the Sherlock Holmes character, and the actor that Michael Caine plays starts to have not literal delusions like our last Holmes, but starts to have delusions of grandeur in terms of, maybe I could be this great detective, why not? Who's to say I don't have the mind of a genius? So well recommended. It is available. Most of these are now available in different countries. I just happen to have older editions. So 7% Solution, I think, that Shout Factory put out, and maybe even Shout Factory for that in America. This Eureka Masters of Cinema. And then we'll just round it off with the two big hitters. Basil Rathbone. This is all his films. You can get this in plenty of different editions. This just happens to be the Italian one. What was found interesting is that they started to use this as propaganda. So although the first one was the Hound of the Baskervilles in 1939, America wasn't in the war yet, even though Basil was British, so he technically was kind of in the war. Once America enters the war, they move the timeline from the Victorian era to World War II, and Sherlock Holmes is facing Nazis all of a sudden. So you get your first kind of parallel universe on screen, I think. That kind of, as I was discussing with Harold last week, it's probably the earliest example of that outside of maybe Pimpernel Smith with Leslie Howard, who we mentioned Ronald Howard earlier. But if you can only have one Holmes, if you have the money for one Holmes thing ever, and you can't afford anything else, then I love Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss' Sherlock. I love all of these, and I wouldn't have recommended them. But if you can only have one on screen, because on audio I think you should go for the Clive Medicine versions, and on page obviously go for Conan Doyle. But if you can only have one on screen, Mr. Jeremy Brett. That's what you want. So this is this French or German? Sherlock Holmes is der wohl Bürgermeister Detective der Welt. Yes, I think we're dealing in German. Elementär, mein lieber Watson. Elementär. I'm quite good at pretending I can speak different languages. It's got a few commentaries on it, including from Michael Ross, Jeremy Paul, John Madden, probably not the recently deceased NFL football coach. It switches Watson's midstream. We had his father was a really famous actor. So with David Burke, and then we moved to Hardwick. His father was Cecil Hardwick. Ed Hardwick? Hardwick. We'll go old school and we'll just use the surname. Hardwick. It doesn't even say in the back, or I'd just cheat. But this, to me, is the definitive on-screen Holmes. It doesn't go deerstalker route. It doesn't go cliche. This started the horrible trend of Watson being a bumbling oaf. Just because Holmes puts him down sometimes in the novels doesn't mean that he's bumbling. It just means that Sherlock thinks he's so far above him because he is Sherlock Holmes. Watson's a war veteran and a qualified doctor. He's not an idiot. And this resets that. So Watson is extremely competent and quite often is the factor who pushes Holmes into kind of going the right way about things and cracking cases. But it's Jeremy Brett's mercurial performance in this that is the sole reason you're going to want this. It's Granada who made it. It's so if you like stuff like their British TV's Poirot and Marples and things, you'll love the production value because it's very authentic. But Jeremy Brett famously got a bit too involved in the role, he let it get to him quite a lot, and he said he struggled to get Holmes out of his mind at the end of filming, and it did affect him quite badly, and he started to really resent Sherlock Holmes. Not resent the actual job, or resent the fandom, or resent the fame, if you like, although I don't think he was a particular fan of that aspect anyway, but he resented actually Sherlock Holmes, like the character became kind of haunted him in a strange way, and you can see why, because Jeremy lets it really become part of him. Going right back to studying Scarlet, when the German prince comes to the chambers in disguise and expects to be treated with reverence once Sherlock reveals that he's discovered his identity. Holmes just laughs and laughs and laughs in the guy's face, and you can see the prince like, nobody's ever done this to me. And it's Jeremy Brett. It's an almost primal laugh. You know the way you can have a primal scream and it sounds horrifying? If there's such a thing as a primal laugh, Jeremy Brett does it here. But he also, in other places, convinces you why he would fall for Irena Adler but not fall in love with Irena Adler. They don't cross that line. It's very faithful to Conan Doyle without being just too reverential, where it starts to be the more pastiche version. Although I love this stuff, and I do love these films. I think they're terrific, pulpy entertainment, great 30s and 40s movies, absolutely terrific entertainment. As a canon, as a body of work, this is the Sherlock Holmes for me, and it's where you want to be. So if I can only recommend one thing, get this. But we started out with Arthur Wartner, and we've got all the way down to Jeremy Brett. So those are my Holmes recommendations. So if you don't have any of those, I've hopefully given you food for thought. But give a chance to that Film Detective box set with Arthur Wartner and Richard Rowan, because those are underrated little movies. And Film Detective have done their best with bad material. So they've been dealt a bad hand, but they've given us Sherlock fans something good to play with. Kind of threw that metaphor in the bin there, didn't it? But listen, thank you very much for watching. Hope you've gotten something out of this, apart from waste of half an hour. But anyway, thank you very much. If you have any favourite Holmes yourself, why don't you pop them down in the comments. For now, let's stay safe out there. Love and mercy, my dears. Love and mercy.